everyone, I'm Michaela from the Garden Club of Alexandria, and I'm here today to give you some tips on making a small arrangement. We have a wonderful shared schedule with Hunting Creek Garden Club, and this year's theme is iconic jewelry. Thanks to Laura Francis for being my partner in crime in planning this. We had a great time together and are enjoying sharing our video responsibilities with other club members. I'm going to show you an image of our iconic piece that we're inspired by this month. This is a brooch designed by Oscar Heyman in the 1930s. It was produced exclusively for Tiffany & Company through 2000, so for 70 years. It has a very delicate use of colored jewels. You can see it's some lovely yellows and greens and purple and a very delicate stem. And that's going to be the inspiration for our design today. I wanted to talk just a little bit about a small arrangement. It is a specific design with specific instructions, not just something that is small. The most important thing you need to know is that a small design should not exceed 8 inches in any direction. So a ruler or a tape measure is really your friend on this one, and that means up and down and side to side and circumference. So keep your ruler handy because you're going to want to really measure to make sure you're keeping in the constraints of the design before it gets too far. So some things to think about when you're choosing your container, and I've got a variety of containers here. This month the Garden Club of Alexandria has a little bit of an extra challenge because we've been asked to provide our arrangements in giveaway containers. So while I'm showing you a variety, I've got a couple I wanted to highlight that will really help you achieve that without giving away one of your precious treasures. So the important thing to know is the container has to be small. We've only got 8 inches to work with, and your actual arrangement should be 1 to 1.5 times the height of the container. So if we've got only 8 inches, that means your container should be 4 inches or less. You also want to be restrained in your use of material. So you want to make sure that your opening is not too wide. So here are a few that I'm going to highlight. This is a pretty Wedgwood vase with kind of a flared opening. It is about 4 inches high. It's one of the taller ones in my collection. Another one is this little silver cup, and you can see that's a little less than 3. Here's a glass, an etched glass, which is lovely, and I would probably use something like that if I didn't have to give my arrangement away. And then these next two were actually finds from the Look Again thrift store that is on King Street. This one was $1, and it is a little over 4 inches, so it's definitely on the tall side. We'd have to be real careful with our selection of materials on this one. This one is actually a great size. It's a pretty etched glass. It was $3 at Look Again, so you won't have to have too much angst about parting with this as a giveaway container. And it is about 3.5 inches high. It's got some pretty glass etching on the side. And the one I'm going to use today is got a little bit of crystal on it, and it's just a really nice size with a flared top and a thinner base. And I thought, particularly since we're going for this brooch look, something that was thinner at the bottom and flared up at the top would be a really nice choice for us. So this guy is about 4 inches. So we need to make our arrangement about as high as the container to stay within our 8-inch height restriction. So a few more thoughts about your selection of materials. One is your largest bloom should not exceed 1/3 the size of the container. So that's a really nice rule of thumb. And thinking about that, we really have to keep the scale, which is one of our focus design principles this month, small. So in proportion, in scale, think about the size of each selection, because if you have a giant bloom, it's going to overwhelm the whole arrangement. And then the other thing that is really important on this one is that you need to be very thoughtful about your selection of materials so that one color likely predominates. If you have such a small area to work with, if you have a lot of colors, it can get confusing and messy. So I've kind of honed in particular on this arrangement. It's October, things are on the wane, which can work to our advantage and to our disadvantage. The selection isn't as great, but as this growing season goes on, the blooms get smaller. So I was able to cultivate some small blooms, some things that are plants in transition, and I'm going to show you how I worked with those. You can also take a bigger bloom or piece of plant material and cut it down. So focus not just on the plant as a whole, but what portion of the plant you can take and use for this arrangement. So the color I've chosen to use, even though it's not a dominant color in this brooch, is purple. There's a lot of purple in bloom. The scale of the plants, when I looked in the garden, was really ideal for me. And then green is kind of my secondary color that I think picks up on the stems and the foliage around the pansy. So materials. This, and thank you to Jennifer Kelly, who doesn't know that I've actually cultivated all of these from her garden. She is at the GCV Symposium, which I'm so looking forward to attending today, actually. So this is euphorbia. So this is the fall version of euphorbia. It's done blooming, it's starting to turn, but you can see it's got a wonderful red color in the stems, and the tips of the euphorbia are tiny. So this provides a really good green backdrop. Another one I found are these fall lily berries. They have this sort of crispy shell, which I can remove for my arrangement, but they provide a really nice gloss and shine, and since we're working with jewelry, I thought something shiny would be really great. Also, I found from my pot sort of these rangy coleus. Again, the end of the growing season, so the leaves are really small, but it's perfect for this arrangement, for the little leaves that taper down the sides of the brooch. And in terms of color, Jennifer had this wonderful Veronica in her garden that, while the actual bloom is obviously taller than the vase, the colored portion of the bloom is just tiny, and there's such a delicate scale to the blossoms. I think it works really well. And then lastly, from some pots that Jennifer had, again, end of the growing season, but look at these tiny petunias. And they had a long stem. I was able to pull off some of the leaves, and I think this is actually really the focal point of the arrangement. It's just perfect for a pansy. So I've got these kind of cut to size a little bit, so I'm gonna go ahead and just place them so you can see what I'm looking for. But obviously, it's a design that tapers out into a bloom, and we're just looking to get a nice variation of color, keep it really simple. I want this to be something that's super accessible for everyone to do from their own garden. So I'm gonna start with euphorbia. I've taken the big plant, and it's real easy to cut small pieces. I'm gonna use that as sort of my framework. So I'm just gonna make a little collar out of it. Then that'll give me space to tuck the color around. And again, I'm just keeping my ruler handy to measure as we go along. I'm gonna put a few of these berries in. Some of them have, you can see here, I've taken off the crispy husk, and I just have the shiny berries. And they have that kind of wonderful purple color and a little bit of gloss. So I'm putting them kind of in the middle to give a little height. And you have to kind of work with the stems to get things in the position you want. Next, I'm gonna put in my Veronica. That's gonna give me some fullness through the middle. And again, I'm looking for the tapering at the bottom and kind of that little rounded bulbous shape at the top. Again, this does not need to look exactly like the pansy. This is truly an inspiration, and you can see I've taken my own interpretation because I'm working with purple tones instead of being literal with the yellow tones. So I took that purple as the accent color. And the Veronica has wonderful movement to it, so it really gives you some interesting shape and form in the middle, and also a pop of color. All right, and then my piece de resistance. I'm gonna pop this right in here. And what this does, that I think is so effective, is it brings me almost a brighter green that, you know, heads towards yellow. So we're getting a little bit more of a flavor of that. And I'm just gonna kind of fill in the middle here. And don't forget, I'm right under 8 inches. So you very quickly, with a little bit of height, get to your height. And I'm at about 7 inches wide. So just keep that ruler handy and keep checking yourself in all directions, don't forget. And I'm trying to keep this a little bit upright, just because that's the shape of that pansy brooch. Got one more little delicate guy. I'm still within my 8 inches, barely. And then I look at it, kind of turn it around. I've got some holes in the middle, but again, I want this to be kind of a loose arrangement. I'm not adhering to any particular style. I'm looking to interpret this brooch and also to stay within my requirements. So this is just a nice loose arrangement that someone can enjoy and put together quickly. So I'm just going back and adding a few more berries. I've got a couple more Veronica that I can tuck in the middle. I think I've got some nice color here. This is kind of a fun piece of the euphorbia that has some movement to it. Pop that in. All right, and then I think I've got in pretty good shape here with this guy. Then I've got my rangy coleus that I actually clipped from my own little indoor pot. And I thought he would be really nice to kind of cascade right down the side. Like the little leaves on the brooch. Tuck a couple pieces in. He also has a really nice kind of yellow and purple color scheme that I think really works with my simplified scheme, because remember, we're trying not to introduce too many colors, so the whole thing is staying very much within the overall color scheme. All right, I think I've got one more piece of euphorbia that I can tuck in here. So here we go. It's loose enough so that I get my little butterflies can kind of fly through the top. It has a very subtle reference to this brooch. It has a little sparkle from the berries, a nice pop of color. And remember, everything is small in scale. It's within my 8 inches. This top flower is 8 inches, also 8 inches this way. So very quickly on this small arrangement, I've gotten to the maximum height. But all of the flowers are a really nice scale for the arrangement. It's loose, it's pretty. I think it will be a really enjoyable giveaway arrangement. And I hope that all of you will be inspired with what bits and pieces are in your garden about the scale and the size and the proportion of this fun little arrangement. Enjoy!